Managing money and budgeting does not have to be hard with ADHD. There are a lot of simple tips that I've personally used over the years that have allowed me to buy a house at 23 and live comfortably and free from financial stress. In this video, we're going to dive into some of the things that have helped me most, and keep in mind this isn't official financial advice, these are just tips that have helped me. We'll cover everything from retirement, budgeting, investing, and tackling debt. Comment down below any tips that you have for other people who are watching, and you may help someone out in the comment section below. The first tip that I have revolves around Autopay and managing your direct deposit. The easiest way to dramatically reduce your financial stress and stay on top of your money is to set up Autopay for every single possible bill that you have that's required of you to be paid every single month. So this can include things like your rent, your HOA, your mortgage payment if you have one, your credit card bills, your utility bills, etc., etc. Autopay will make it so that whatever bill you have, it'll be automatically paid off before it's due by one of your accounts that you currently have. The kind of key principle to managing money with ADHD is having to keep track of as few things as possible. And this is one of the easiest things that you can fully automate and not have to think about at all, just by setting up Autopay. This usually is one of the simplest things to do, and with just 30 minutes of your time, you can save yourself hours of hassle in the future. After you've set up Autopay, the next biggest thing to do is look at your direct deposit or how your paycheck is split up. Once you've kind of tallied up all of your bills, you've gotten everything on Autopay, and it's going to be paid off fully by the end of the month automatically. The next thing you want to do is make sure that every single account that you are paying from has enough money so that there's no kind of overdraft fees or anything like that. What you can do is super simple. Just create like an Excel sheet or something like that, or a little table. You can even handwrite this and have a few basic columns. First, write down all of your monthly expenses, things that you have to pay off every single month. So credit cards, utility bills, again, the same kind of stuff we already set up Autopay for. The next step is then to just write down the amount that you will have to pay. Now, if this is a credit card, just kind of guesstimate how much you think you'll have to pay off each month based on previous spending. Then list down what account you will be paying this certain bill from. So if it's a utility bill and you're paying it from your checking account with like maybe let's say Capital One, write that down. Write down, Capital One checking account will be paying this off. And then sum up kind of all of the things you're going to have to pay off and how much money you will be taking from each account. And then make sure that you talk to your employer or set up your direct deposit such that each of these accounts has enough money to pay off whatever it is that you need to pay off for that month. These two steps alone only take maybe 30 minutes, maybe 40 minutes at most, and will save you so much time. If you have it so you automatically are paying off all of your bills and you automatically have all the money that you need in the correct accounts, this will make your life way easier. But the thing is, unexpected expenses will come up all the time. And how do we kind of factor these in? And this is kind of where we start to move into budgeting. And one of the key principles I have with ADHD that has helped me a lot is called buffered budgeting. With ADHD, impulse control is a huge issue. And oftentimes we will overspend because either A, we just got impulsive and wanted to buy something, or B, we forgot that we already spent a certain amount, that we're already over our budget, so on and so forth. So there are a couple of simple ways that we can get around this. The first tip that I have is that when you're creating your monthly budget, always keep some kind of a buffer for your monthly expenses. Have like $300, $500, just something like that, maybe 5 to 10% of your monthly spending, just kind of there floating around as a buffer for any accidental overspending that might occur. This can also be useful for things like emergencies. So if your car happens to break down or something like that and you need to get it towed and it's an unexpected $200, you have a kind of buffer built in already, so it won't be an issue and it won't be something you need to stress out about too much. Or if the new Legend of Zelda happens to come out and you weren't expecting it or you forgot about it and you go and buy it, but you didn't budget in for it, that's okay because you had that little buffer room to play with. But you can't just have buffer room in your budget for every single month. You also need to have buffer room in all of your checking and savings accounts. The way that this works and the way that I like to do this is for each of my accounts, I like to have about a $1,000 to $2,000 buffer for any expenses that I might have. The way this buffer basically works is I hope I will never have to touch it or will have to dip below that buffer. But the thing is, let's say that I get $800 a month into a certain account and I have budgeted $800 a month for that account, but I happen to spend $850. So the $800 I made that month will be gone and I'll be 50 negative. But because I have $1,000 as a kind of cushion there, it doesn't really matter, right? I can easily make that $50 back up to $1,000 and I will kind of reduce my risk of overdrafting dramatically. If you do want to have a buffer in your monthly budget, you need to also have that buffer built into a lot of your accounts as well. $1,000 can be a pretty high buffer for a lot of people. I've been saving up money for a really long time, so this was like pretty straightforward for me to implement. But if if you're just getting started, even a $500 buffer, a $100 buffer can be absolutely great. It'll help stop you from overspending unintentionally. Now, one of the hardest parts with budgeting is actually motivating ourselves to A, create a budget, and then B, to stick to it. And one of the reasons for this is because oftentimes folks with ADHD will try and budget the way neurotypical people do, and they'll kind of do what I like to call pointless budgeting. And in the next tip, we're going to talk about how you should not do pointless budgeting and how to budget instead if you have ADHD. For neurotypical people, they can kind of just do things because they're the right thing to do. But the thing is, if you have ADHD, you typically need some kind of a reason to motivate you. You can't do your homework on time just because you should do it, because the thing is, you could do it later and still get it done. You need a compelling reason that interests you in order to do something in an efficient, effective way. So how do we apply this principle to budgeting? There are a couple of steps that we need to take. First, we need to look at the 3 areas of spending that most people will generally start to spend in: your needs, your wants, and your savings. We're going to cover retirement in the next tip. In these 3 categories of spending, what we want to go ahead and do is first look at our needs. Again, similar to what we did in the Autopay and direct deposit step, go ahead and list out all of your necessary monthly expenses, things that you need to pay or you will go homeless, starve, whatever it is. Then take the monthly net income you can expect. If your monthly net income varies, just take the average for now. Now take your monthly income, subtract out your needs, the things that you need to pay no matter what, and then see how much you have left over. Now there are 2 things you can spend on with this leftover money, and this is kind of where we get to play around with stuff a little bit and have some fun. We have 2 categories: wants and savings. Both of these are kind of similar. These are things that we don't need to buy in order to live, but they'll dramatically improve our life satisfaction. The way I like to think about it is wants will improve my life satisfaction in the moment currently, whereas savings will improve my life satisfaction in the long term, but right now will result in me kind of not having as much money to play around with. So what you want to do with both of these is kind of list out, in an ideal world, what would you want to have on a month-to-month basis, and then what would you want to save up for. So let me give you some examples to make this more clear. In my life, for my wants, what I wanted to have was just a couple $100s that I could kind of use to eat out, because really the only things I really will do for fun is eating out. I'll occasionally buy a video game here and there. I don't really do that much that is expensive when it comes to having fun. So my wants are relatively low month to month. And when it comes to my savings, I have several long-term goals that I want to save up for. You should never ever just save for the sake of saving. Have goals and specific things that you want to save up for. For me, for example, I wanted to buy my first house, and eventually in the next 10 years or so, I want to fully own 3 to 4 properties. I also want to buy a car that's around $20,000, and I have that car in mind, and I want to save up for that and again pay it off in full. So these are 2 things that I will be actually saving for, right? And what you can do now is, in theory, what I could do is I could just not have any wants, not eat out at all, and just have my bare necessities, and then contribute that kind of extra money I have towards eating out, towards my savings. But the thing is, for me, quality of life matters. I like to go out here and there. I have a partner. I want to go on dates with her. I have friends that I want to see, restaurants I want to try, and memories are important to me. And so I don't want to sacrifice that. So I will never ever give up my kind of extra free money that I have just for kind of messing around and having fun. But my savings are incredibly important to me. So I will prioritize those over everything else, and I save considerably more than I spend on wants. However, the situation might be completely different for you. You might not have many big goals that you want to save up for. Maybe you already have most of what you want, and what you really want to do is just experience lots of things in your day-to-day life. In this case, what you can do is put less of an emphasis on saving, but more of an emphasis on your wants and having fun in the moment. Either approach is okay. It all boils down to what you want to do, and when you get clarity on what you want to do, it becomes obvious what path you should take. When it comes to saving, though, there are some kinds of saving that all of us should be doing, and one of the biggest ways to save that everyone needs to do is retirement. There's a common misconception that you start saving up for retirement when you get older. That is not the case. The younger you are, the more your money will be worth when you retire, because with retirement money, it compounds over time. The simplest way to understand how compounding interest impacts money is to think of a penny that doubles in value every year. You might not realize it, but after 32 years, that penny becomes worth billions of dollars. And at first, you don't really see it, right? In year 1, this penny is now worth 2 cents, then it's worth 4 cents, then it's worth 8 cents, 16, 32, 64, $1.28. You really haven't made any money at all in those first couple of years. So on the surface, it seems like compounding interest doesn't really work. But in the long term, if we keep on going, again, eventually we reach 2 to the 32nd, which is billions of dollars. And retirement works in a similar way. The longer money sits and the longer it's allowed to compound, the greater growth you will see. And most of the growth that you see with compounding interest happens in the last few years of growth. Similar to that penny that doubles. In the last few iterations of that penny doubling is where we see billions of dollars of gain. But up until that point, we really don't see much at all. That's just how exponential growth is. So with retirement, the longer you have money sitting in retirement, the better it is for you. So the earlier you can start, the better. So how do we kind of budget for retirement, and how does it exactly work? The easiest way is to kind of begin with a retirement calculator. You can look up tons of retirement calculators online. I personally will use NerdWallet's pretty often. And you can put in your age of retirement, how much money you want to have, and you can use that calculator to kind of see like, okay, how much money do I currently have? How much money do I need to save up? How much money will I have on a day-to-day basis? So on and so forth. And you can use that in order to kind of meet your goals and adjust your expectations. Using a retirement calculator is the biggest thing that will show you how much money do you need to put away realistically in order to achieve the lifestyle that you want when you retire. Once you've kind of got a figure in mind and you play around with the calculator and you kind of think about your goals, your expenses, so on and so forth, you can then start to look at options for retirement. There are two main types of retirement accounts. There's a Roth IRA and a 401k. Both of these have their pros and cons. A Roth IRA is the most simple. Anyone can start a Roth IRA. You can contribute up to $7,000 a month, and one of the biggest advantages of a Roth IRA is any money you put in there and any money you earn will not be taxed when you take it out. Taxes can eat up a lot of money, so it's really nice to be able to withdraw a lot of your money and not have to pay taxes on it or taxes on the money that you earn. Roth IRAs are an incredibly attractive option due to the tax breaks. However, the problem is that, again, you can only contribute $7,000 a year. The other option is a 401k. 401ks are unique because the way that they work is your employer typically gives you a 401k plan. And what the employer will do is take out money before taxes are applied. This can be helpful for a number of reasons. If you make quite a bit of money, what you can do is you can actually use your 401k to get some tax breaks. So for example, if I make, let's say, $120,000 a year, but I contribute $10,000 a year to my 401k, I might change tax brackets and thus have to pay less in taxes per year. This typically isn't a huge amount, but for me personally, like I pay about 12% of my income to my 401k every year, and this lowers my taxes by about $300 a month, and this makes it so that my health insurance, everything kind of quote unquote pays for itself. The second big thing about 401ks is you can contribute way more. I believe currently you can contribute up to $19,500. I'll pop a different number up on screen if that's not the case, but this allows you to save a lot more for retirement. But one of the biggest problems with a 401k is that when you do withdraw money, because it was withdrawn before taxes, you will have to pay tax on it. So there's pros and cons to both. What I recommend is if you have an employer that gives a 401k, go ahead and go with your employer. If you don't have an employer that has a 401k plan, invest everything you can in the Roth and max it out every year. And if you need more money than you can invest into your Roth or your 401k, so if you hit the limits before you can kind of get, your ideal savings, you can just start dumping things into an investment account outside, and in the next tip we'll cover investing. A quick thing to note, 401ks and Roth IRAs have heavy penalties if you decide to withdraw before 59 and a half. That's always an important thing to keep in mind. Now the next tip is investing. Investing is really straightforward. You really do not need to think a lot about it. If you have a ton of money and it's just kind of sitting around, don't let it sit in a savings account where it's only gaining like 4.5% interest every single year at most. With investing, you can get up to 8%, 9%, even 10% gains on your money year over year, and you can do this by investing in something called the S&P 500. The S&P 500 is a kind of stock collection of the top 500 companies at any time, and it is one of the highest performing index funds that is out there. Unless you are a professional investor, do not really invest in anything except for the S&P 500. Even most professional investors have a hard time beating the S&P 500 as its returns are very consistent and very solid over time. If you just have money sitting around and you want it to grow more over time, put it into the S&P 500 and you'll see your money double about once every 10 years. I would say keep it as simple as that. If you have money sitting around and you want it to grow faster than it would in a checking or a savings account, there's a lot more we can get into with investing, but for most people, that is kind of the most simple, straightforward way to go about it, and that will get you a huge amount of returns for the least amount of effort. Now, the final topic we will cover is debt. There's a couple of ways that you can tackle debt payments. One method is called the snowball method, and this is where you tackle kind of your smallest debts first, and then you kind of build up momentum and you tackle your biggest debts last. Then there's the avalanche method where you tackle your highest interest debts first, and then you kind of slowly pay things off from there. And then there's also kind of a bottom up method where you just tackle your biggest debts first and pay those off. Or the ones that are gaining the most interest, the ones that you're putting the most money towards every month, those will be the ones you pay off. So out of all of these methods, the kind of best method to go for is the kind of bottom up or avalanche method, where you pay off the things that are earning the most interest first or your highest debts first. But from a psychological perspective, for those of us with ADHD, this is often not the most effective way to go about it. With ADHD, we like to see progress. We like to see things moving forward. So the snowball method actually tends to work better, in my opinion, and in my experience, for people with ADHD. Because you can actually see yourself kind of making progress, actually fully paying off debts, it can be really rewarding and satisfying and can kind of make you excited to pay things off quicker and faster faster and to see those numbers go down. And after the first time that you fully pay off a card that was difficult to pay off for, it'll be really exciting, and you'll be excited to pay off your next card and your next card after that. And it'll become less and less intimidating to pay off kind of those huge debts that you might have if you've already paid off a ton of smaller ones. Psychologically, this method is a lot better, even if it's technically not the most efficient. That about does it for this video. Here's another video up here if you want to check out more tips on ADHD, and then here's a video on focusing with ADHD. I hope this video helped. Comment any tips you have down below. Thank you so much for watching, and take care.